The Mariner's Compass quilt is something I've always wanted to dive into, and this Quiltsmart printed interfacing makes it super easy. Today's video, I'm going to walk you through all of the steps. Let's get started. Like I said, I'm going to walk you through following the instructions to the Quiltsmart Mariner's Compass. It is a printed interfacing. Check this out. It has all of the pieces we need to build each wedge, plus we have a few other pieces I've cut out that we'll get to for the applique about the middle of the project. But first of all, I want to point out I use these wonderful Anthology Lava Batiks, and what I really did is I chose all of the colors, well, and Anthology helped me, pick them out to match the pattern cover so that while you're watching today's tutorial, it really matches the actual instructions with inside the pattern cover so that you really can see and follow along. So with that said, let's dive into this. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to build what they call the rhumbs ring, and it is this purple and red section you see right here, and we're going to sew the triangles from rectangles, and everything was pre-cut. So those fabrics I just show you were the actual stacks of the pre-cut fabrics that we need to go, and I just followed the instructions for that. Now with this, I have my rough side, or the glue side of the interfacing that is pointing up, and I can read the word start there. And with that, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take my first purple rectangle and I'm going to lay it just slightly past the word start. So the start was there. I'm going to slightly past here, and it's on that dotted line. And now I'm going to take the iron, and the first few touches with the iron, I want to be careful because I don't want to fuse this anywhere. Well, if I really want to be careful, I almost ironed on my cutting mat. I better slow down there. Let me put this down. But what I was about to say is I don't want to fuse this where I don't want it. I'm going to press into the corner so that I can fold this back and begin setting where we're going to sew into position. So watch how this works. I'm coming over here, and what I'm really doing is I'm just going to touch up here with the corner tip of my iron, so that I've set it in location. Then I'm going to use my cutting tools. I'm going to come over here on the cutting mat. You can see where that's bonded. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking this here and I'm folding it back onto the first straight line. That straight line will be a sew-in line. And you can be a little bit sloppy in your work, but I'm going to be very accurate in my sewing. I'm going to cut right now the 1/4 inch like that, set that aside, fold this back over, and now I'm ready to return to my stack of fabrics and grab one of those red rectangles as well. The red rectangle is going to get laid on here with about that same overlap you see. And then as I go to the sewing machine, I have what would be right sides together. I want to make sure I'm pointing that out. I'm using batik, so there's no real wrong side today. But if you're using prints, always right sides together. When we go to the machine, I'm flipping it over and I'm going to stitch right along this straight line. So there's some dotted lines and there's some straight lines on here. And these straight lines right now, as I come in here, are going to be my sew-in line. And I start just a little ways past it, and it's real easy for you to see on the instructions here that are printed. And I'm just going to sew that straight line. And I can see both layers of fabric nice as I'm going. All the way through there. We can cut our threads. Now, the next piece, I'm just going to form with the red this triangle here. So as I go to press, I don't want to press everywhere. I want to just press down near this point. So this is going to come over here like this. And I first start up here, pressing that seam, and like I said, it's this corner down here I want to hit, and I'm just touching it. Then I come back with the fabrics down on the mat, and I'm going to fold back on this seam, and let's say that had stuck too much. Well, of course it's still warm. I can just peel it back a little ways. And now what I want to do is just get that line back lined up because I peeled it back a little far. And it is really, you could free cut these, but it's really safer to use your ruler. And I'm just cutting a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to trim that off like this. And I'm going to go ahead now and grab another one of the purple rectangles and do the exact same thing. So I've got my purple rectangle here. I'm laying it right sides together, overlapping the work I've already done. I go to the machine, slide it in so it's nice and stacked up smooth. I'm even cheating that purple fabric under the red a little bit more so I can really make sure I've catching all my seams like I need. And we're just going to sew this straight through. Once this third part is put on, now my ironing zone is getting much safer. I'm not worried about touching the interfacing with the iron. So I can come back in here, I can set this seam nice. And I'm going to do the exact same formula over and over again until I'm to the very last piece. And guess what? Through the magic of television, I already have the last piece set in place. So let me show you what you're looking at here. So again, I've just done the full repetitive sewing motion, just like I showed you from the beginning. This one I have not pressed down yet. So what I want to do now is I want to press it and bond it so that I can get ready to cut it. So let's do that for us. And I don't need to bond it all the way to the edge. I still have other pieces of fabrics to sew in there. So I'm just bonding that lower corner. Looking up here, making sure my interfacing's flat. Now, what I'd like to point out, however, as I get ready to go ahead and trim this, if you can see, this line here is where one of those yellow or orange wedge fabrics is going to come in here. So this is our trim line out here, this dotted line, just like we started on the other side. So I'm going to fold that back like that. And the instructions are very clear about that. Just want to make sure you see what I'm really doing here. And I'm just going to extend my ruler for the safety. Okay, now for that point there, we have the wedges in place, but we need to go ahead and trim this out. And I really found that the easiest way to do that was to get in here with scissors, because I'm only cutting the fabric. I'm not going to be cutting the interfacing. So I'm just coming in here, and hopefully you can see there's a bit of a dotted line in here. And with that dotted line, I'm just going to kind of look to that. We're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so let's make sure we're going and trimming that back. And I said that and I realized actually we're doing a little bit of an applique top stitch piece here. So just trim to that line, just like I'm doing, but you need to do them all the way first. And then on your interfacing pieces, you had 2 other little pie shapes that were pre-cut away from this wedge. And those little pie shapes, well, they look just like this, as a matter of fact. There's a big one, and that's the blue pie shape. And then there's the green one, and that's the small pie shape. What I've done for these both, and I've already pre-stitched them, but it's the rough side down. So we always say roughs to rights on this. So my rough side is the right side. This would be the right side of the fabric here. Then what we would go ahead and do, and we stitch along the straight line, and then we want to go ahead and trim these back. So I've already trimmed a blue one here, so you can see that it's been trimmed around the arc. And you can do that with scissors, you can do that with a rotary cutter on these small ones here. Of course, I love my little Shark rotary cutter. And what I do is I start from the sewing line, and I run it straight down. And then on this side here, I'm just running it up, and then over the arc like this. Okay, so both the blue and the green pieces are now prepped out. And with those prepped out, I'm gonna go ahead and get them ready to sew into position and iron into position. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna come over here, just like this. Now I've got fusible here, and when this flips over, to make it so that it is finishing off the raw edge, I now have fusible on the back side of that as well. So I want to line this up, and I'm going to set this in, and what I'm looking at here is both these wedge lines as well as the dotted line up in here. So you can see, and maybe it's easier if I do this. Sorry, I'm moving all around. I get so excited about this stuff. But I'm going to lay it right over the top here, like this, and I'm aligning it with these lines down here. And you can also take the time to just eyeball in the green as well as you're getting started to make sure, especially on your first one. And in my entire quilt, I built one wedge first, and then I came back and built all the rest once I understood the way the whole process worked. These are like this. Let's get ready to iron them down so we can top stitch them. And I'm just taking a minute to make sure that I have everything the way I want, and I'm not seeing any of the white interfacing showing up on this line up here. And then from the top here, I'm securing it and securing it, being cautious not to get the iron on any of the interfacing because right now it's glue sides up. And I'm going to do the same with my green wedge, minding that top seam, just like yay. Okay, so those are perfect, those are set, but before I do any other sewing, I'm gonna top stitch them. So earlier, when I was doing my piecing, I matched a thread that I wanted, so right now I'm using a blue thread, and it will always show up in the project, so just take a moment and consider what you're using. And I'm just right here on this top edge, and I'm just stitching down that blue line, so very nicely. I'm just going to slide on down. I'm going to catch this green line so that everything is now secure and I can play rough with it. And we have two last wedges to sew in. Okay, now that we have the blue and the green inner and outer arcs top stitched down, let's go ahead and trim this upper arc as well. That's going to facilitate putting in the next two pieces of fabric. And I'm just going to trim along this dotted line you see here. And I'm just doing it freehand, so I'm being careful. Need a little extra pressure as I go over where the purple and red fabrics meet there. There we go. Okay, so now that's cleaned off. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in what they call the cardinal points. But check it out. Join me over here at the quilt. The only variable in the whole pattern is the fact that you have some orange and some, well, 4 of each, of the long cardinal points and then 4 of each of the short coming together like that. So basically we're building the wedges in opposite format. So I've already created for us this one here, where I have a long orange. The rules in the pattern say we always put our bright to the right. So I'm doing that. So my yellow piece will go in here, but I always want to put my short piece on first. So this one now, I'm going to start over here with an orange wedge on this side. And what we need to do, right sides together again, and let's make sure we start up here at this tip. This is the point we're looking for. So we sew all the way down through here. We're going to make it to this dotted line. So, just like before, we're going to the machine, right sides together, sewing on the interface side on the straight line. And I'm just taking a nice little medium pace through here, watching everything come together nicely. And I am paying attention because as I come down near where these two pieces are going to intersect, there's a big dot in the pattern or on the interfacing, like a stop sign. So I'm right there. I'm going to backstitch on that stop sign, hit my thread cutter. Oh goodness, I've left a mess over here at the ironing station as usual, but we're ready to go ahead and press this back now. And this one we're just going to trim so I can completely bond it to the interfacing, except for this little area down here where I want to trim back. And I don't believe I've mentioned, for all of you new quilters out there, part of the benefit of the interfacing staying in is it's going to stabilize our fabrics permanently. So we're not going to have any weird stretching or puckering because of sewing on the bias and quilting on the bias and whatnot. We're going to need a big ruler later, so I might as well pull it out of my stash right now. And I'm just going to trim this as well. And now we're going to put on our yellow long cardinal point, and that one's going to go straight through here. Also looking at this upper tip, I'm going to lay that on here just like that. Sewing on the interfacing side. And this will be the last of the seams we're going to do for this wedge. Okay, we have that yellow cardinal point on here. We're going to iron this out. It's the big piece, so make sure I have plenty of room here as I'm working. Starting at the seam, pressing in towards the interfacing. Just like that. Pressing all the way down there through that corner. Okay. And now, working from the interfacing side, clear off your ironing or your cutting board, because I'm going to use my long ruler and I'm laying it right on this dotted line, because that's going to be my 1/4 inch seam allowance later when I put the two wedges together. And I'm going to trim, and I'm going to have to slide my ruler slightly when I'm done. So I'm going to start down here so that I'm not starting at the tippy tip of the ruler. Trim through there like that. Make sure it's all cut. Do the same to the other side. Okay. Oops, I want to make sure I get that all the way trimmed on that dotted line, because when I go to sew these together, I'll be looking at the fabrics together now. I'm not going to be following the interface like paper piecing was being done, so that's real important that we get that trimmed down. There's one last piece that we're going to put across the top, and it was the last piece that was on your interfacing as well, and it's this arc. What this allows us to do is to turn the top edge underneath, because the entire medallion is appliqued onto a 54-inch square of its background. So right now I'm going to go rough side to the right side of the wedge, and I'm going to stitch along this top edge like this, just using the width of my presser foot, or roughly a 1/4 inch seam allowance, no more than a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's an arc, so take it slow, but I'm also securing this here. This was never ironed, never pressed. I do not want it to be connected to the top with anything other than thread. And as mentioned before, this piece here, like on our little inner rings, will be used to roll this outer edge up. And there's a little bit of information in the instructions, and I actually got to talk to Maddie personally when I saw her, and I was thanking her for this awesome product, but she says that she's actually changing the way she does it as well. So the instructions talk about now stitching this line, but to make it so that all of my points line up best, I just fold these edges underneath them. But I'm not going to stitch them right now, so that I can adjust this edge if necessary, because I'm going to go right sides together, starting at my tips down here. Now I'm making sure that I've got my fabrics trimmed appropriately. That's why that trim was important there. All right, here we go. We're going to put this last seam in where we're joining two of our wedges. Now 2 wedges will make us a 1/4. And then those 4 1/4 will make us that awesome mariner's compass you see behind me. We're just taking our time, letting our interfacing help us, but making sure we're adjusting as we go along, sewing down our 1/4 inch. Just coming back out here to make sure my corners are lining up and I don't have my interfacing trapped yet down here. I'm gonna roll that out a little bit. Make sure that gets lined up. Okay, and here we go to finish out this seam. And as I'm coming into this last couple of inches, I'm really starting to mind what's going to happen up at the outer arc. So remember, we've got our interfacing. So right now I'm going to roll the interfacing down on the back piece, the piece that's under. Make sure that I'm not exposing any of that white up at the top. And then I'm going to roll my top corner, even if I have to make a slight adjustment, down. And I'm also going to catch that interfacing there. And you can see I even had a slight little tear. I got it caught on something, and it's no big deal whatsoever, because this is just going to catch like this perfect, and it's going to line it all up. Let's backstitch right there. Okay, so check this out. When we are done, We have now joined a beautiful wedge. We've got the quarter of our Mariner's Compass coming together. The pieces are all but perfect thanks to that Quiltsmart interfacing. And then the last thing I'll mention, if you look at the quilt real carefully, it's a fantastic place to be practicing all of those wonderful free motion motifs we've been teaching you in our skills and drills sets. So we've got a bunch of fantastic practice points where you can be doing micro bubbles or swirls and whatnot and fun to bring even more life to your super cool Mariner's Compass. So this makes me crave some beach time, so I'm gonna grab a board, head on outdoors while you're coming up with your colors for your Mariner's Compass right here at Man Sewing. Thanks for being a Man Sewing fan. It's great to have you out there encouraging me to create fantastic new content. If you've missed any of the videos, we've got links for you here and here. And while you're checking those out, make sure you're subscribed. We don't want you to miss any of the action.